A werewolf romance written by Olivia Smith. Prologue. The night my mother died, she made me promise something impossible. "Cut your hair," she whispered, her fingers trembling as they brushed my face one last time. "Bind your chest. Lower your voice. Never let them know what you are." I was 13, kneeling beside her in our pack's healer's hut, watching the light fade from her eyes. Outside, wolves howled, not in mourning, but in celebration. My father had just taken a new mate, a stronger one who could give him sons. My mother's death wasn't mourned because she'd failed the ultimate test for an Omega female. She'd only produced me, a daughter, worthless in a pack that measured worth by claws and dominance. "Promise me, Kira," she begged, gripping my wrist with the last of her strength. "They'll kill you or worse if they know. Omegas like us. We're only good for one thing to them." I promised. I cut my hair with her sewing scissors that very night, chopped it short and ragged. I wrapped linen tight around my chest until I could barely breathe. I practiced dropping my voice an octave, practiced walking with my shoulders broader, my hips stiff. By morning, I wasn't Kira anymore. I was Kai. A weak, sickly boy nobody wanted but nobody bothered to kill either. For 3 years, I survived. I kept my head down, did the dirtiest jobs, slept in the stables, ate scraps. I became invisible, forgettable, safe. But safety, I learned, is just another word for borrowed time. Because the day the Alpha King came to our territory, everything I'd hidden, everything I'd buried, everything I'd sworn to keep secret, it all unraveled with a single breath. He walked into the clearing where I was hauling water, and his head snapped toward me like I'd screamed. His nostrils flared. His golden eyes locked onto mine. And I knew, in that heartbeat, that my disguise had just shattered. Not because he saw through it, but because his wolf had smelled something mine couldn't hide. "Mate, hey, before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. What country are you in, and what time is it there? Sunrise in Sydney, midnight in LA, or sunset in Paris? I want to know. Drop it in the comments, then let's get into the story." Chapter 1. The day everything changed. I was scrubbing blood from the butcher's stones when I first felt it. A pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Every wolf in the pack felt it too. Heads lifted, ears pricked. The Omega children stopped playing. Even the crows went silent. Alpha King Darian Ashwood had entered our territory, and the very forest seemed to bow. I kept my head down, kept scrubbing, kept my breathing steady. I'd learned that being unremarkable was the best defense. Let the stronger wolves posture and preen. Let them fight for his attention. I just needed to stay invisible long enough for him to leave. But fate, I've learned, has a cruel sense of humor. Because the moment he stepped into the clearing, the moment his massive frame cast a shadow over the stones I was kneeling on, my entire body betrayed me. My wolf, the one I'd kept caged and silent for 3 years, surged forward with a violence that nearly broke my human form. "Mate!" she screamed inside my mind. "Mate! Mate! Mate!" I bit down on my tongue so hard I tasted copper. I dug my nails into the stone until they split. I would not look up. I would not breathe. I would not give myself away. "Who is that?" His voice was a low rumble, the kind that vibrated through your chest and made your knees want to buckle. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to my pack's alpha, a cruel man named Garen who'd never bothered learning my fake name. "Who? Oh, that's just Kai," Garen said dismissively. "Omega runt. Sickly thing. We keep him around for grunt work." I could feel the Alpha King's gaze on me like a physical touch, could feel him studying me, measuring me, breathing me in. "Look at me, boy," he commanded. It wasn't a request. It was an alpha order, the kind that makes your wolf obey even when your human mind screams to resist. I lifted my head slowly, reluctantly, knowing that the moment our eyes met, everything would change. And I was right. His pupils dilated, his jaw clenched. His massive body went completely, utterly still, the kind of stillness that comes before an attack. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then he took a step toward me, his nostrils flaring as he scented the air between us. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might break through my ribs. This was it. This was the moment he'd expose me, reject me, or worse, claim me in front of everyone, and reveal what I'd hidden for 3 years. But instead, he did something I never expected. He smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf who'd just cornered prey. "This one," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm taking this one with me." Garen laughed, actually laughed. "Your Majesty, you can't be serious. He's useless, weak as water. Can't even shift properly." "I didn't ask your opinion," Darian said softly, and the temperature in the clearing seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I said I'm taking him. Consider it a favor. One less mouth for you to feed." And just like that, my fate was sealed. I was going to the capital with the Alpha King, who somehow, impossibly, knew exactly what I was. Chapter 2. The Journey Begins. The Alpha King's carriage was nothing like the rough wagons I'd ridden in before. It was lined with dark velvet, smelled of pine and leather, and moved so smoothly I barely felt the road beneath us. I sat across from him, my hands clenched in my lap, my eyes fixed on the floorboards. He hadn't spoken since we left. Hadn't even looked at me. But I could feel his attention like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. After what felt like hours, he finally broke the silence. "You can stop pretending now." My blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you mean, Your Majesty. Don't insult me." His voice was soft but lethal. "I could smell you the moment I stepped into that clearing. Lavender and rain. Female. Omega. Unmated." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his golden eyes pinning me in place. "So, I'll ask once. What's your real name?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to keep hiding. But something in his gaze told me he'd know, and the punishment for lying to an Alpha King was death. "Kira," I whispered. "My name is Kira." He nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed something he already knew. "And how long have you been pretending to be a boy, Kira?" 3 years. "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer was a minefield. If I told him the truth, that my pack would have sold me, used me, or killed me for being a female Omega with no family, he might see me as weak, broken, worthless. But if I lied, he'd know. And I was so tired of lying. "Because my mother told me to," I said quietly. "Before she died. She said if they knew I was a girl, I'd either be forced into a mating I didn't want, or killed for being too weak to be useful. So I became Kai. And Kai survived." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he sat back, his expression unreadable. "You're not weak," he said finally. "Weak wolves don't survive 3 years of hiding in plain sight. Weak wolves don't fool an entire pack." He paused. "But you did fool them. You didn't fool me." "I know," I whispered. "Your wolf called to mine the moment I stepped into that clearing," he continued. "Do you know what that means?" I knew. Oh gods, I knew. It meant we were fated mates. It meant the moon goddess herself had bound us together before we were even born. It meant I was supposed to be his, and he was supposed to be mine. But it also meant I was in more danger than I'd ever been in my life. Because if the Alpha King's enemies found out he'd claimed a weak, disguised Omega as his mate, they'd use me to destroy him. "It means I'm a liability," I said, my voice hollow. "It means you should reject me and leave me at the next village." His eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. "Is that what you want?" he asked, his voice dropping to a growl. "To be rejected?" No. Every cell in my body screamed no. My wolf was clawing at my ribs, begging me to submit, to accept, to throw myself at his feet and beg him to claim me. But my human mind, the part that had kept me alive all these years, knew better. "What I want doesn't matter," I said carefully. "You're the Alpha King. You need a strong mate. A Luna who can fight beside you, who can give you powerful heirs. I'm none of those things. You're wrong." He leaned forward again so close I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "You're exactly what I need." And before I could ask what he meant, He reached out and gently, impossibly gently, tucked a strand of my short hair behind my ear. "Sleep, Kira," he murmured. "We have a long road ahead." Chapter 3. The Palace of Wolves. The capital was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd pictured stone walls and iron gates, soldiers and suffering. Instead, I found a city carved from white marble, surrounded by forests so thick and green they looked like emerald waves. The palace itself rose from the center like a crown, its towers piercing the sky, its windows glowing with golden light even in the middle of the day. I stared out the carriage window, my breath fogging the glass, feeling impossibly small. "Have you ever been to a city before?" Darian asked. I shook my head. "Never left my pack's territory." "Then this will be overwhelming," he said carefully. "But you'll be safe, I promise you that." I wanted to believe him, but the moment the carriage stopped and the door opened, I realized just how impossible that promise would be to keep. Because standing on the palace steps, waiting for us, was a woman who radiated power and fury in equal measure. She was tall, with hair like spun copper, and eyes like chips of green ice. She wore a gown that probably cost more than my entire pack's yearly earnings, and when she looked at me, her lip curled in disgust. "So," she said, her voice dripping with contempt, "this is the little mouse you brought home." Darian stepped out of the carriage first, then offered me his hand. I hesitated, but his eyes told me I had no choice. I took it, and the moment our skin touched, I felt the bond flare between us, hot and electric and undeniable. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Darian," she said sweetly, though there was nothing sweet about the way she said his name. "Introduce me to your guest." "Lady Seraphine," Darian said coolly. "This is Kira. She'll be staying in the palace under my protection." "Protection," Seraphine repeated, her eyes raking over me. "How generous of you, Your Majesty. Though I have to wonder, what exactly does she need protection from?" The answer hung in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone present. Me. She was the threat, and she knew it. "Come, Kira," Darian said, his hand still holding mine. "Let me show you to your rooms." He led me past Seraphine, past the gathered servants and guards, into the palace proper. The moment we were inside, I yanked my hand from his. "Who is she?" I demanded. "My father's choice for my mate," he said bluntly. "Before he died, he arranged for me to marry her. Unite our packs, strengthen the bloodline." My stomach dropped. "You're engaged?" "No," he said firmly. "I never agreed to it. I've been avoiding the mating ceremony for 2 years, but the council is getting impatient. They want me to produce an heir. They want stability. And Seraphine, she wants power." "Then why did you bring me here?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why not just marry her and be done with it?" He turned to face me fully, his expression fierce. "Because she's not my mate, Kira. You are." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You can't mean that." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." "But I'm nobody," I whispered. "I'm an Omega. I can't even shift properly. I'll make you look weak." "You make me feel alive," he said, and the raw honesty in his voice nearly broke me. "For 2 years, I've been suffocating in this palace, playing politics, pretending I don't feel the bond pulling me towards someone I hadn't even met yet. And then, I walked into that clearing, and I smelled you, and everything made sense." He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup my face. "I don't care if you're Omega or Alpha. I don't care if you've been pretending to be a boy for 3 years. I don't care about any of it. You're mine, Kira, and I'm yours. And no council, no arranged marriage, no scheming lady is going to change that." Chapter 4. Learning to be myself. My rooms were larger than the entire hut I'd shared with my mother. The bed alone could have fit 5 people, piled high with furs and silk pillows. There was a bathing room with a tub deep enough to drown in, a wardrobe full of clothes I'd never worn, and windows that overlooked gardens so beautiful they looked painted. I stood in the center of it all, feeling like an imposter. A servant knocked softly and entered, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. "I'm Marta," she said. "His Majesty asked me to help you, adjust." "Adjust to what?" "To being yourself again," she said simply. Then she gestured to the wardrobe. Those bindings you're wearing. They need to come off. You'll hurt yourself if you keep them on much longer. I backed away instinctively. I can't. You can, she said gently. You're safe here. No one will hurt you for being female. His Majesty would slaughter anyone who tried. But it wasn't about safety. It was about survival. For 3 years I'd been Kai. I'd walked like him, talked like him, thought like him. I didn't know how to be Kira anymore. I didn't even know if Kira still existed underneath all the lies. I don't know how to be a girl, I whispered, shame burning my cheeks. I don't know how to wear dresses or braid my hair or act like a lady. I'll embarrass him. Marta's expression softened. You don't have to be a lady, child. You just have to be you. She crossed to the wardrobe and pulled out a simple dress, soft gray linen, nothing fancy. Start with this, one step at a time. It took me an hour to work up the courage to remove the bindings. When I finally did, I gasped at the relief, at the ability to breathe fully again. Marta helped me into the dress, her hands quick and efficient. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My short hair was growing out unevenly. My face was thinner than I remembered. My eyes looked too big, too haunted. But I was undeniably, obviously female. You're beautiful, Marta said softly. I shook my head. I'm broken. No, a deep voice said from the doorway, and my heart leapt into my throat. Darian stood there, his eyes roaming over me with an intensity that made my skin flush. You're perfect. He crossed to me slowly, giving me time to retreat if I wanted. I didn't. I brought you something, he said, holding out a small wooden box. Inside was a silver comb, delicate and beautiful, with tiny wolves carved into the handle. It was my mother's, he said quietly. She died when I was young. But I remember her using this every night, brushing her hair and humming, I want you to have it. Tears pricked my eyes. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not enough, he said. Not for what you've survived, not for what you've sacrificed. He took the comb and gently, carefully ran it through my short, choppy hair. The gesture was so tender, so intimate, that I couldn't stop the tears from falling. You don't have to pretend anymore, Kira, he whispered. Not with me. Not ever again. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself believe him. Chapter 5. The First Threat, Afi. I'd been in the palace for 3 days when the first attempt on my life came. I was walking through the gardens. Marta had insisted I needed fresh air when I felt it. Eyes on me, not friendly ones. I turned slowly, scanning the hedges, the tree line, the shadowed archways. Nothing. But my wolf was screaming danger, and I'd learned to trust her instincts. I started walking faster, heading back toward the palace entrance where guards were stationed. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. Running. I broke into a sprint, my heart hammering, my breath coming in gasps. I wasn't fast enough. I'd never been fast enough. A hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around, and I came face to face with a man I'd never seen before. He was massive, scarred, and his eyes were empty of anything resembling mercy. Nothing personal, he said, raising a blade. Just business. I opened my mouth to scream, but before I could, he crumpled to the ground. Darian stood behind him, his hand still wrapped around the man's throat, his eyes blazing gold. Who sent you? He snarled. The man just smiled, blood trickling from his mouth. You'll never keep her safe, he rasped. She's already dead. She just doesn't know it yet. Then his eyes rolled back, and he went limp. Poison. He'd taken his own life, rather than talk. Darian dropped the body and turned to me, his hands gentle as they gripped my shoulders. Are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak. This is my fault, he said, anguish in his voice. I brought you here. I put a target on your back. It's not your fault, I managed. Someone wants me dead because of what I am to you. Someone wants you dead because they're terrified of what you could become, he corrected. A true Luna. My mate. The one thing standing between them and control of this kingdom. He pulled me against his chest, and I let myself collapse into him. Let myself be weak just this once. I won't let them hurt you, he swore. I'll burn this kingdom to the ground before I let anyone touch you." But even as he said it, I knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. Because whoever wanted me dead had resources, patience, and no qualms about murder. And I was just a girl who'd been pretending to be a boy to survive. What chance did I have against that? That night, Darian insisted I move to the room adjoining his. "I need to be able to hear you," he said. "I need to know you're safe." I didn't argue. The assassin's words still echoed in my mind. She's already dead. She just doesn't know it yet. I tried to sleep, but every shadow looked like a threat, every creak of the floorboards like approaching footsteps. Around midnight, I heard Darian's door open. Then my own door eased open, and he stepped inside, wearing only loose sleep pants, his chest bare. "I can hear your heartbeat from my room," he said quietly. "You're terrified." "I'm fine," I lied. He crossed to my bed and sat on the edge. "Kira, I need you to understand something. I will protect you, but I can't do that if you won't let me in." "Let you in how?" He reached out and took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. "Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking. Stop hiding from me." I took a shaky breath. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I'm scared that no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you want to protect me, it won't be enough. I'm scared that loving you is going to get me killed." "Then we'll face it together," he said. "Because I'm not letting you go, Kira. Not now. Not ever." And then he did something that stole the breath from my lungs. He lay down beside me on top of the covers and pulled me against his chest. "Sleep," he murmured. "I'll keep watch." And surrounded by his warmth, his scent, his steady heartbeat, I finally did. Chapter 6. The Council's Ultimatum. I woke to shouting. Darian was gone, his side of the bed cold. I scrambled out of the sheets and pressed my ear to the door connecting our rooms. "You cannot continue this madness," a man's voice roared. "The Council will not accept her." "The Council doesn't get a vote," Darian said, his voice cold as winter. "I am Alpha King. She is my mate. That's the end of the discussion." "She's a disguised Omega with no pack, no title, and no training," another voice cut in. "She'll make us look weak. Our enemies will see it as an insult. Lady Seraphine's pack alone could—" "I don't give a damn about Seraphine's pack," Darian interrupted. "I've told you 100 times. I'm not marrying her." "Then you leave us no choice," the first voice said. "We invoke the Council's right of challenge." My blood turned to ice. I didn't know much about royal politics, but even I knew what that meant. The Council could demand Darian prove his chosen mate was worthy through a series of trials. And if she failed, he'd be forced to choose another. Or face rebellion. The door to my room burst open, and Marta rushed in, her face pale. "You need to get dressed," she said urgently. "The Council has called an assembly. You're being summoned." "Summoned for what?" "To prove you're worthy of being Luna," she said grimly. "Or die trying." She dressed me in a gown of deep blue, formal, severe, nothing like the soft dresses I'd been wearing. She braided my growing hair back from my face, applied subtle cosmetics to hide how terrified I looked. When I was ready, she gripped my shoulders. "Listen to me, child. They're going to try to break you, humiliate you, make you look weak in front of the entire court. But you're stronger than they think. You've survived things they can't imagine. Remember that." The throne room was packed. Hundreds of wolves, alphas, betas, nobles, all turned to stare as I entered. Darian sat on his throne, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly I could see his knuckles were white. Seraphine stood to his right, looking smug. An elderly man in council robes stepped forward. "Kira of Nopak," he announced. "You have been claimed as mate by our Alpha King. But before this court recognizes such a bond, you must prove yourself worthy through 3 trials. Do you accept?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to run. But Darian's eyes found mine across the room, and in them I saw something that steadied me. Faith. He believed I could do this. "I accept," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. The councilman smiled, but it wasn't kind. "The first trial is strength. You will face a member of the King's Guard in single combat. If you cannot defend yourself, You are not fit to be Luna." A guard stepped forward, a massive beta male who looked like he could snap me in half without breaking a sweat. The crowd murmured. This wasn't a fair fight. It was an execution. "This is insane," Darian snarled, rising from his throne. "She's never been trained in combat. This isn't a trial. It's murder." "The rules are clear, Your Majesty," the councilman said smoothly. "She must prove she can protect herself. Or prove she cannot." Darian looked at me, anguish in his eyes. I knew what he was thinking. He could stop this. He could override the council, refuse to let me fight. But if he did, he'd look weak. And a weak Alpha King was a dead Alpha King. I stepped forward into the center of the throne room. The guard followed, cracking his knuckles. "I'll try not to hurt you too badly, little Omega," he said with a cruel smile. I didn't respond. I just widened my stance, remembering everything I'd learned from watching the Pack Warriors train. He lunged, I dodged. Barely. His fist grazed my shoulder, and even that glancing blow sent pain shooting down my arm. The crowd laughed. I could feel their contempt, their certainty that I'd fail. And maybe I would. But I wouldn't go down without a fight. He came at me again, and this time I didn't dodge. I dropped low and drove my fist up into his ribs with everything I had. He grunted, surprised. I followed up with a kick to his knee, and he stumbled. The crowd went silent. I wasn't winning, but I wasn't losing either. Chapter 7. Blood and Proving. The guard's surprise lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then his eyes narrowed, and I saw the moment he decided to stop playing with me. He came at me like a storm, fists flying, feet sweeping, using his size and strength to overwhelm me. I blocked what I could, dodged what I couldn't, and took the hits I had no choice but to absorb. Pain exploded across my ribs, my jaw, my shoulder. Blood filled my mouth, but I didn't go down. I couldn't. Because if I fell, they'd call the trial over, and I'd lose Darian. I'd lose everything. So I stayed on my feet, even when my legs shook, even when my vision started to blur, even when the guard grabbed me by the throat and lifted me off the ground. "Yield," he growled. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe, but I managed to shake my head. His grip tightened. The crowd started to murmur, some calling for him to finish it, others shifting uncomfortably. This had gone from a trial to a public execution. "Enough!" Darian's voice cracked through the room like thunder. The guard dropped me, and I collapsed to my knees, gasping. Darian was on his feet, his eyes blazing gold, his wolf so close to the surface I could see it in the way his muscles tensed. "She's proven herself," he snarled. "She's taken more punishment than half my warriors could withstand and didn't yield. The trial is over." "Not yet," Seraphine's voice rang out, sweet as poisoned honey. "The rules state she must either win or yield. She's done neither. The trial continues." Darian looked like he wanted to rip her apart, but before he could respond, I forced myself to my feet. Every part of me screamed to stay down, but I'd spent 3 years pretending to be someone I wasn't to survive. I wasn't about to stop fighting now. "I haven't yielded," I said, my voice hoarse but clear, "and I'm not going to." The guard looked at Darian, uncertain. The Alpha King nodded once, though it clearly cost him everything. The fight resumed. But something had changed. The crowd had stopped laughing. They were watching me now, really watching. Seeing not a weak Omega pretending to be strong, but a woman who refused to break. The guard came at me again, but this time I was ready. I'd been watching him, learning his patterns. He favored his left side, overcommitted on his right hooks. When he swung again, I didn't try to block. I slipped under his arm, spun behind him, and drove my knee into the back of his leg. He went down to one knee. Before he could recover, I grabbed his head and slammed it down onto my rising knee. The impact echoed through the throne room. The guard collapsed, unconscious. The room went silent. I stood over him, swaying, bleeding, barely conscious myself, but still standing. The councilman looked like he'd swallowed something foul. The first trial is complete, he said reluctantly. I didn't wait for applause or congratulations. I just turned and walked out of the throne room, my head high, refusing to let them see how close I was to collapse. I made it to the corridor before my legs gave out. Darian caught me before I hit the floor. "I've got you," he murmured, lifting me into his arms. "I've got you, my brave, foolish mate." Did I pass? I managed. "You did more than pass," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You shocked every wolf in that room, including me." He carried me to the healer's wing, where Marta was already waiting with supplies. As she cleaned my wounds, Darian sat beside me, holding my hand so tightly I thought he might break it. "2 more trials," I said quietly. "2 more chances for them to kill me." "Then we end this," Darian said, his voice cold with fury. "Tonight, I'm calling a meeting with the council. I'm going to find out who's behind these impossible trials. And when I do..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I'd seen the look in his eyes. Whoever was trying to break us apart was about to learn what happened when you threatened an Alpha King's mate. Chapter 8. The Second Trial. The second trial came 3 days later, before my bruises had fully healed. This time, they gathered us in the palace gardens at dawn. Darian stood beside me, his hand on the small of my back. A silent promise that he was there, even if he couldn't intervene. The same councilman stepped forward, looking far too pleased with himself. "The second trial is wisdom," he announced. "A Luna must be able to navigate the complexities of court, to make decisions that benefit the pack above personal desires." He gestured to a table where 3 sealed boxes sat. Inside each box is a choice. One holds salvation, one holds suffering, one holds death. You must choose which box to open without knowing what's inside. Your choice will determine the fate of someone you love. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, someone I love?" The councilman smiled. "We've taken the liberty of detaining 3 individuals from your past. Your choice of box will determine which one lives, which one suffers, and which one dies." Darian's growl was feral. "You can't be serious. This isn't a trial. It's cruelty." "It's reality," the councilman said. "A Luna must make impossible choices. If she cannot, she's unfit to rule." I felt sick. "Who did you take?" The councilman gestured, and 3 figures were brought forward in chains. The first was Marta, her kind eyes now filled with fear. The second was a young boy from my old pack, one of the few who'd been kind to me when I was pretending to be Kai. The third made my heart stop. It was the daughter of the pack's healer, the woman who'd been my mother's only friend. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "Choose," the councilman said. "Or we kill all 3. I looked at the boxes. There was no way to know which was which. No riddle to solve, no logic to follow. It was pure chance. And someone I cared about was going to die because of it. "This is madness," Darian snarled. "I won't allow it." "Then you forfeit her claim to be Luna," the councilman said. "And by law, you must choose another mate within the month. Lady Seraphine has already agreed." I saw it then. The trap. This wasn't about proving me worthy. It was about forcing Darian to reject me, to choose between me and his kingdom. I couldn't let that happen. "I'll choose," I said quietly. "Kira, no," Darian said, his hand tightening on my back. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," I said, meeting his eyes. "Because if I don't, they'll keep pushing until one of us breaks. And I'm not breaking. Not today." I turned to the boxes. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing so fast I felt dizzy. How was I supposed to choose? How could I possibly decide who lived and who died when I had no information, no way to know? Then I remembered something my mother used to say. When you can't see the path forward, trust your instincts. They'll guide you home. I closed my eyes and let my wolf rise to the surface. She'd been silent for so long, caged and suppressed. But now I needed her. And she answered. I felt a pull toward the middle box. Not logical, not rational. Just a deep, bone-deep certainty. I opened my eyes and pointed. That one. The councilman's smile faltered for just a second. Then he gestured, and a guard opened the middle box. Inside was a single white rose. "Salvation," the councilman said, his voice tight. The prisoners were released. Marta ran to me, sobbing with relief. The boy and the little girl were ushered away by kinder guards. I'd chosen correctly, but I could see the fury in the councilman's eyes. He'd expected me to fail. Wanted me to fail. "The second trial is complete," he bid out. "The third and final trial will be held tomorrow at sunset. Prepare yourself, Omega, because the next one won't be so easy." I watched him storm away, and I knew he was right. Whatever came next was going to be designed to destroy me. But I'd come this far. I wasn't giving up now. Darian pulled me into his arms the moment the council dispersed. "You're incredible," he whispered, "and I'm terrified I'm going to lose you." "You won't," I promised, "because I'm not going anywhere." Chapter 9. The Final Trial and the Betrayal. The final trial was held in the throne room at sunset, just as the councilman had promised. But this time, something was different. The air was thick with tension, and the crowd that had gathered was larger than before. Nearly every wolf in the capital had come to watch. Darian stood beside me, his jaw clenched, his eyes scanning the room like he was searching for threats. He'd barely slept. Neither had I. We both knew this trial would be the worst. The councilman stepped forward, but before he could speak, the throne room doors burst open. Seraphine swept in, flanked by a dozen armed guards wearing her family's colors. "Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But I have information the council needs to hear before the final trial begins." Darian's eyes narrowed. "What information?" "Information about your so-called mate," Seraphine said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She pulled out a rolled parchment and handed it to the head councilman. "It seems our dear Kira has been lying to us all." My heart stopped. The councilman read the parchment, and his expression transformed into something gleeful and cruel. "According to this document, Kira is not merely an Omega from a minor pack. She is the daughter of a traitor, a wolf who was executed for attempting to assassinate the former Alpha King 20 years ago." The room erupted. Wolves shouted. Accusations flew. I stood frozen, my mind reeling. My mother had never told me about my father. She'd only said he was dead. I never knew how. Or why. "That's a lie," Darian snarled. "My father died of natural causes." "Your father covered it up to avoid scandal," Seraphine said smoothly, "but the records exist. And if Kira is the daughter of a traitor, then by law, she cannot be Luna. In fact, by law, she should be executed." "No," Darian said, his voice deadly quiet. "You will not touch her." "I don't have to," Seraphine said with a cruel smile. "The council will do it for me." The head councilman stepped forward. "By the ancient laws of our people, the bloodline of a traitor is tainted. Kira cannot be your mate, Your Majesty, and the third trial is forfeit. You must choose another." Darian's eyes blazed gold. His wolf was so close to the surface I could see it rippling beneath his skin. "I will burn this kingdom to ash before I let you take her," he growled. "Then you'll be known as the Mad King," Seraphine said, "and your own people will overthrow you." The room went silent. Everyone was waiting to see what Darian would do, if he'd choose me or his crown. I couldn't let him make that choice, because I knew what it would cost him. "It's okay," I said quietly, stepping forward. "I'll go." "No," Darian said, grabbing my arm. "No, you're not going anywhere." "If I stay, they'll force you to choose between me and your kingdom," I said, my voice breaking. "And if you choose me, they'll destroy you. I won't let that happen." "Kira, I love you," I said, the words tearing out of me. "I love you, and that's why I'm leaving. Because you're a good king, and your people need you. Even if I can't have you." I turned to face the council. "I renounce any claim to be Luna. I'll leave the capital tonight and never return." The councilman looked triumphant. Seraphine looked smug. but Darian looked like I'd driven a knife through his heart. "Don't do this," he whispered. "Please." "I have to," I said. And then, before I could change my mind, I turned and walked out of the throne room. I made it to my chambers before the tears came. Marta found me there, sobbing into my pillow. "Oh, child," she said, gathering me into her arms. "You can't leave. He'll never forgive himself." "He'll survive," I said. "He's strong. He'll find another mate, someone worthy of him, and he'll move on." "You are worthy of him," Marta said fiercely. "And he knows it. That's why he's about to do something incredibly stupid." Before I could ask what she meant, the door burst open. Darian stood there, his eyes wild. "Pack your things," he said. "We're leaving." "What?" "I'm abdicating," he said. "Effective immediately. Let the council have their kingdom. Let Seraphine have her power. I don't care anymore. All I care about is you." Chapter 10. The Truth and the Transformation. I stared at Darian, my heart shattering and reforming all at once. "You can't abdicate. Your people need you." "My people just tried to execute you based on lies," he said, his voice raw. "They don't deserve me." "But no," he said, crossing to me and taking my face in his hands. "I've spent my entire life serving this kingdom, sacrificing my happiness for duty. And where has it gotten me? Surrounded by vipers who would rather see me miserable than see me with the woman I love." His thumb brushed away my tears. "I choose you, Kira. I will always choose you." Before I could respond, Marta gasped, "Your Majesty, look." We turned to see guards pouring into the room, but not Seraphine's guards. These were members of the king's personal guard, and they were dragging someone with them. The head councilman. "We found him, sire," one of the guards said, "in Lady Seraphine's chambers, with enough poison to kill a dozen wolves." The councilman struggled. "This is a mistake. I was investigating—" "You were conspiring," the guard interrupted. "We also found forged documents, including the one about Kira's father." My knees nearly gave out. "Forged?" "Lady Seraphine has been planning this for months," the guard explained. "She wanted to discredit Kira, force you to marry her instead. The councilman was working with her in exchange for a position of power." Darian's expression went from anguished to absolutely lethal. "Where is she?" "She fled the moment she realized we were coming for the councilman," the guard said, "but we'll find her." "See that you do," Darian said coldly, "and when you find her, bring her to me in chains." As the guards dragged the councilman away, Darian turned to me. "Your father wasn't a traitor," he said gently. "And even if he had been, it wouldn't matter. You are not defined by your blood, Kira. You're defined by your choices. And you've chosen to be brave, to be kind, to be strong even when the world tried to break you." "I don't feel strong," I whispered. "I feel terrified." "Being terrified and doing it anyway is the definition of courage," he said. Then he dropped to one knee. "Kira, I know this has been the worst week of your life. I know you've been tested and hurt, and nearly killed more times than I can count. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple silver with a moonstone at its center. "Will you be my mate? Will you stand beside me, not as someone I'm forced to choose, but as someone I choose freely? Will you be my Luna, my queen, my everything?" I looked down at him. This powerful, fierce, incredible man who'd given up everything for me, who'd seen me at my weakest and loved me anyway, who'd believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "Yes, I'll be your mate." He slid the ring onto my finger, then stood and kissed me. It wasn't our first kiss. We'd shared one the night before, when he thought he might lose me. But this one was different. This one was a promise. When we finally broke apart, Marta was crying. "I'll prepare for the mating ceremony," she said, beaming. "It's going to be the most beautiful wedding this kingdom has ever seen." But Darian shook his head. "No ceremony. Not yet. First, I'm going to teach Kira how to shift." I blinked. "What?" "You're my mate," he said, "which means your wolf is stronger than you think, It's been suppressed for years, but it's there, and I'm going to help you find it. For the next 3 days, Darian worked with me. He took me deep into the forest, away from the palace and its politics. He taught me how to listen to my wolf, how to trust her, how to let her rise to the surface without fear. She's not going to hurt you, he said. She's part of you, and she's been waiting a long time to be free. On the 4th day, as the full moon rose over the trees, I felt it. A surge of power so strong it took my breath away. My bones began to shift. My muscles reformed. And then I was on 4 legs, my vision sharper, my senses heightened. I looked down at my paws, silver white fur, just like in my dreams. Darian shifted beside me, his wolf massive and black as night. He nuzzled my neck, and I felt the bond between us flare brighter than ever. We ran through the forest together, 2 wolves bound by fate and choice. And for the first time in my life, I felt complete. When we returned to the palace, word had spread. The Omega who couldn't shift had not only transformed, she'd done so under the full moon, a sign of strength and favor from the moon goddess herself. The remaining council members bent the knee. The people who doubted me fell silent. And Seraphine, when she was finally captured, was exiled from the kingdom forever. 6 months later, I stood in the throne room wearing a gown of silver and white. Darian stood beside me, his hand in mine, as the high priestess bound us together as mates before the entire kingdom. From this day forward, she said, you are one. Alpha and Luna, king and queen, bound by the moon and by choice. Darian turned to me, his eyes soft. I love you, he whispered. My brave, fierce, perfect mate. I love you too, I said. My king, my protector, my home. And as we kissed, sealing our bond before the kingdom, I realized something. I'd spent 3 years pretending to be someone I wasn't just to survive. But in the end, it was being exactly who I was, broken, scared, but unbreakable, that had saved me. I was Kira. I was Omega and Luna. I was weak and strong. I was his, and he was mine. And I had finally found where I belonged. The end.